Hey guys, it's Luke Javersack with GS Luke DFS, bringing you guys my preview for the 2021 Players Championship down in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, which I am absolutely stoked for because I'm going to be at the event, shooting some live coverage there, enjoying the golf, and overall just having a great time at a great event. So I'm excited to bring that content to you guys, to be at the event, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are excited for this weekend as well. So let's hop right into the preview. First of all, this event is the closest that we get to a major. The points for the FedEx Cup are counted just like a major would be. We get a field that's very comparable, actually, in my opinion, better than a major because we don't have to deal with a lot of international players, which makes for an absolutely unbelievable weekend. We get pretty much all of the top PGA Tour players. We get a couple international guys that have made their mark over here, and overall, the top of the cream of the crop always end up winning, which is nice. The course is iconic. It's TPC Sawgrass. You've heard of it before. I guarantee you've seen some of the holes before. The 17th hole is absolutely the most iconic hole in all of golf. An island green. It has the stadium structures around it, so the fans will be watching. That's where I'll be watching for a majority of the tournament, and I'm stoked for it. The players get excited for it. It's a fun event, a fun course, and an absolutely huge event where you can make your name for yourself. So I'm excited for it. Let's hop into the preview. By previewing the field for this week's event, which is absolutely stacked. There's 49 of the top 50 golfers in the world, and there's also the top 125 ranked golfers from last season involved. There's 154 golfers in total, which means there's about 25 other slots, which are filled in by past champions of the players, past champions of some majors, and other top finishers from the FedEx standings in the past, such as a Henrik Stenson, etc. So the field is absolutely stacked. We have stars up and down the field, future stars, stars of the past, you name it. There's just a ton of depth, and if you have a favorite golfer, the odds are that he's playing this week, which makes it pretty awesome. We also have DJ, John Rahm, JT, all coming back after taking last week off, which is nice. We'll have a full field this time. And we also get Bryson back after his big win last week. He wasn't one of my picks last week, but he was definitely someone that fit the bill. I was a little bit concerned about his accuracy. I thought that he might hit it in the water more than he did, but I feel like he did the right thing by taking irons in some of the holes that he did, and it worked out for him. So congrats to him. He's obviously in great form as well. And Jordan Spieth is back as well. He just pretty much plays every tournament that he can at this point, and who would blame him, right? He's on a heater right now, and he should be getting out there every time he can. So speaking of who's hot, let's talk about some of the hotter golfers coming into this week right now and who to keep an eye out for. So first of all, we have Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth has a top 5 finish in 3 of his last 4 starts, including a 15th place finish at Riviera. That's his other start there, which was just as impressive, if not more impressive, than the top 10 finishes as well. Riviera is a hard golf course. It didn't fit his game at all, yet he still excelled and was in contention the whole way up until Sunday. So pat on the back for Jordan Spieth. He's coming in probably the best form of anyone in the world. He's also gained in all facets of his game in the last 4 events, except for off the tee, which is just hardly negative. He actually gained at 2 of the events. He lost pretty significantly in the 2 other events, but Jordan Spieth is doing great right now. I expect that to continue this week. I'll definitely be playing him in DFS. I'm not sure if I'll bet on him to win. I think that's a little bit too far-fetched. This course doesn't fit him exactly, but coming in with great form. Number 2 would be Patrick Cantlay. So he has top 10s in 4 of his 5 starts, 4 of his 5 past starts, including a win and a second place finish. That is unbelievable form. I think everyone knows that about Patrick Cantlay. The only issue with Patrick Cantlay would be that he hasn't been around the last couple weeks. He had a stomach flu before the WGC, had to withdraw. Obviously didn't play last week at the API either, which I think was him trying to get back in form after missing a week due to his illness. But I do expect a lot of ownership to be off of Patrick Cantlay because of that. So that's something to consider. And something also to consider about Cantlay is that he's set 2 course records over the past month. So he's not just on good form, he's having some rounds that are historic. So he's in historic form right now. It's pretty much 1A, 1B when you consider Spieth and Cantlay. They're the hottest men on the planet right now when it comes to their form. Number 3 would be Matthew Fitzpatrick, someone that I have touted over the last couple weeks. He has 3 straight top 10s in a row, and those are his only starts on the PGA Tour this year. He had been mostly focusing on the European Tour, some of the Saudi events, that kind of stuff. But now he's back in the PGA Tour and doing outstanding. He is gaining 0.77 strokes per round putting, which is great. It's not sustainable, though. There's no one on tour that gains that kind of strokes on a consistent basis, but good for him. And wow. Yeah, I was glad I played him, but I don't expect that to continue. Number 4 on our list is going to be Jason Kokrak, who already has 5 top 10s this season, including an 8th place finish last week and a 9th place finish the week before. Unbelievable form. He's putting lights out, and at this point, I'm willing to concede that I do think that he's actually a good putter. He was historically a horrible putter, and all of a sudden, Kokrak has started putting to a slightly positive level. And honestly, if he's putting to a slightly positive level, he's going to be a top 30, top 40 player in the world, because he's got a great off the tee game, a great approach game. So I think it's time that we start respecting Kokrak the way that he probably deserves to be respected. And my last guy for this list is Andrew Putnam, who has silently put up 3 straight top 10s, and 4 of his last 5 starts have been top 10s on the PGA Tour. You're like, what? Really? Yeah. A lot of them have been 8th, 9th, 10th place finishes, but still very, very valuable in fantasy. Someone to keep an eye out for. And he's also made a cut in all but 1 event this year, so in 8 of his 9 starts. That's impressive. Definitely coming in good form. And now let's discuss the course for this week, which is TPC Sawgrass in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. First of all, it is a par 71 course. It's a Bermuda grass course as well, being in Florida. But it only comes in at 7,100 yards, 7,189 yards, which isn't very long, especially considering it's a Florida course. It's a Pete Dye design, which is definitely something we will consider. Pete Dye has a very specific way of designing his courses, and there's a specific way to play them as well. So you'll have some players that do very well there, some that aren't as good there. We'll discuss a couple of those here in a second. But one thing, and I want to get this out right now, is the key stats for this week are not very key this week. They're not very correlated much at all. The top correlated stat when running a regression model this week comes in at number 21 out of 50th on tour, and that's shots gained off the tee. Now, normally I love running these regression models. I love looking at the stats that matter the most, but when the stat model comes back and tells me that none of them are very important, I think that's important to consider as well. So when we look at it, and no stat really stands out when you're looking at this course, what that tells me is that you need to be good at every facet of your game. You can't have a part of your game that you lean on, or part of the game that you hide by doing well in the other categories. You have to have a well-rounded game, or else the course will expose you. And when you think about TPC Sawgrass, that makes perfect sense. It's one of the hardest golf courses on tour. There is water on every single hole. There's a lot of risk and reward involved. And when you put yourself in a bad spot, a lot of times you're in a really bad spot. You're not just pitching onto your green hoping to get an up and down. You're pitching sideways. You're hoping that your pitch just stays on the green. It's that kind of golf course. So this week I'm looking for guys that don't have a weakness, guys that gain in all 4 categories if possible, guys that play that Pete design well as well, because it is a very prominent design that we have a lot of data for as well. So a lot of my modeling this week is going to be focused with the Pete Dye portion of the key stat model, and I'm going to be looking for guys that gain in all 4 categories to show that well-roundedness. So those are some of the key stats for this week. And honestly, I'm also looking for players with great recent form. Recent form is something that usually carries from week to week. We've seen it with a lot of those hot golfers recently where they've had 3 or 4 top 10s in their last 4 or 5 events. That's because they're playing well, they've carried that form from week to week, and I'm looking to do similar things from last week or even the week before to translate into this week. And I do also expect the winning score this week to be reasonably low. I'm not expecting it to be like 24, 25 under or anything, but 17, 18 under range makes perfect sense to me. And if you look at the recent results at this event, they back up that sentiment. A couple players go low. It's usually 4 to 5 of them. They end up in that teen to under range, and the rest of the field usually ends up in single digits under par or even over par. That's because it plays very difficult. There's a large amount of big numbers out there, but the golfers that are on form, hitting irons where they want to, making some putts, they are going to score. So I'm looking for guys that have that well-rounded game, guys that are coming in strong form, and as a result, I'm going to have a very small player pool this week. I'm only going to play guys that check all of the boxes because I know it's going to be very, very hit or miss this week. There's not going to be a lot of high-scoring golfers that aren't in that top 10 come the end of the leaderboard. So we're, at least with me, I'm going to be condensing that, making sure people hit all of the boxes, especially with recent form, gaining in all the categories, and playing well on peak die designs. Those are going to be the three main key stats for this week, if you will. So let's hop into my player targets for this week. I do want to give you guys the 3 top correlated stats in case you like making statistical models, because trust me, I've been there before. First of all, number 1 is shots gained off the tee, as I mentioned before. That comes in at 21 out of 50th on the tour. Birdie or better percentage is number 2, and number 3 is shots gained around the green. So while they aren't extremely correlated, they aren't anything I would hang all of your analysis on. They are important to have in the back of your mind. It is also important to consider that a lot of golfers do putt better on Bermuda grass. Talking Sungjae Im, Terrell Hatton, Billy Horschel, those kind of golfers. You definitely want to consider that this week as well. While I won't be highlighting golfers here in a second that are typically great on Bermuda, it's not something that they're known for. A lot of them do gain more strokes on Bermuda than they do on other surfaces. So it is something I did consider this week, but it wasn't one of my key stats. Just wanted to let you guys have those, let them simmer in the back of your mind while I'm talking about my player targets. Now, time to get into our player targets for this week. And before we do, I want to reiterate why well-roundedness is so important. When you're playing a golf course that's as demanding as TPC Sawgrass is, you're not going to be able to dominate it with any facet of your game. And that's backed up by the key stat model. As you see, none of the stats really pop in that model. Another thing to consider is that there's a lot of danger, and you have to have all facets of your game clicking to get out of that danger, to pull off the par save, to pull off that bogey save. And that's why having this well-rounded game is what I'm looking for this week. Just wanted to reiterate that. With that being said, my number 1 spend-up option for this week is going to be Justin Thomas, coming in at $9,900, which is an absolute steal for JT. So JT is most likely, well, not most likely, per the stats, is the most consistent and most well-rounded golfer of the top spend-up options we have this week. He gains in all 4 categories, including putting, which has definitely turned a corner for him this year. And he also is an elite ball striker. He typically and historically gains over half a stroke off approach and off the tee, which makes him the best ball striker in the world most years. And he's also historically gains over 0.4 strokes per round around the green, which is completely excellent. He's very, very good at getting out of trouble, very good at making sure that he's parring the holes that he's hitting bad shots on. And JT is normally someone that you can rely on in a DFS, and I will definitely be relying on him this week. His only issue is his putter. I think we know that. He's just a slightly positive putter this year. But one thing to note with JT is that he makes his home in Florida, and he putts much, much better on Bermuda grass. He's one of those guys that gains about 0.43 strokes more per round on Bermuda grass than he does on his other surfaces. So I do expect him to go out, have a better week than normal putting, definitely in the positive range. And if he has his typical great off the tee game, great approach game, he's able to get himself out of trouble with that around the green game, he's going to have an amazing week. I don't see him finishing outside the top 10 if he has that putter working. And I think he's not only a safe play for DFS, but a very high ceiling play as well, as he could very, very easily win this golf tournament. So I love JT this week. He's my spend-up option and someone I'll have in a lot of my lineups. My second man in for this week at the Players' Championship is going to be Patrick Cantlay, coming in at a price of $9,200, and he's probably the person that fits the bill the best this week when we're looking at the key stats and what I'm considering. So first of all, he gains in all 4 categories, but he doesn't just gain in all 4 categories, he gains significantly in all 4 categories. He's gaining over 0.33 strokes per round in all 4 major categories, which is actually the only time we've ever seen that in PGA Tour history. Yeah, Tiger never even did that in the years that we've had shots gained on tour, believe it or not. He's also a machine on peak die courses. He gains over 2.25 strokes per round on peak die designs, which is by far the best of anyone in the field. And he's also been on fire. We saw him in that hot list earlier. He's someone that's had a lot of top 10 finishes recently. I think the only thing working against Patrick Cantlay right now is the little bit of uncertainty surrounding his illness. He He had to withdraw 2 weeks ago, right before the WGC, with stomach issues and dehydration. But honestly, from what that sounds like to me is that he had a stomach bug of sorts. He couldn't keep water down, probably had to have some IV fluids and stuff. Probably took 3 to 4 days to get back to normal, but I'm sure he's doing much better now. They didn't say whether it was COVID or not. I'm assuming it wasn't. It sounds like a stomach bug. Again, I'm no doctor, but I'm just taking a good speculative guess here. I'm assuming he took the week off last week at the API to get his game back, and if he's playing to even 80% capacity of what he was doing before with his hot streak and whatnot, he's going to be a great play this week. He checks all the boxes. He's great on peak die designs, and he might even come in at lower ownership due to that uncertainty. So I love him this week. He's my second man in. He's going to be an absolute pillar of my lineups this week. Next, for my bread and butter play this week, someone that should be a staple of all of your DFS lineups is Tyrrell Hatton, coming in at $8,500, which is a steal for Tyrrell Hatton. And he's also someone that gains in all 4 categories historically when it comes to shots gained data. Tyrrell Hatton hasn't had the greatest year when it comes to his around the green game, mostly because he lost 3 strokes last week and 5 strokes at the WGC around the green, but that's not something that we typically see with Tyrrell Hatton. Typically, Tyrrell Hatton gains about 2.25 strokes in all 4 major categories, and this year he's actually gaining over 0.35 strokes in the other 3 major categories besides around the green, which is a great improvement. If he's able to get his around the green game back to where it was before, which is about a 0.23 strokes per round baseline, he's going to be an absolute monster. He's going to be gaining in all 4 categories. He's going to grade out very similarly to someone like Patrick Cantlay. And honestly, we've seen it before. Tyrrell Hatton has won tournaments like the API. He has 3 or 4 wins internationally just this year alone, and he's a stud when he's on. Now, last week he didn't play that well at the API, especially in his first and last rounds. But on Friday and Saturday, he had the 2 rounds of the day. He shot 6 under and 5 under, which at Bay Hill's a fantastic score. And it really showed the upside that Hatton has. He isn't necessarily the safest pick because we have seen some of that volatility recently, but that volatility could very well go the other way. He could have some outstanding rounds, could go out this week and torch the field at the players. He isn't the longest player off the tee, but he does have elite accuracy, which I think bodes well for someone this week, considering that there is water on every single hole. And I also do like the discount that you're getting. Normally, Hatton's someone that you're having to buy as a second man in, or even one of the elite players in a smaller field. But this week, he's someone that we can use as our bread and butter play, someone that can be a pillar in our lineup. He's not going to be killing us with our salary, and I absolutely love him this week. He'll be in most of my lineups. He's going to be someone that I'm 3, even 4x the field on, depending on what his ownership comes in at. And I think he's a safe, low floor potentially, but very, very high ceiling play. My value play for this week is going to be Harris English, coming in at $7,500, which is an absolute mispricing considering Harris English's form in the last 3 months. Harris English has been number 2 in the field, which is essentially number 2 in the world when it comes to shots gained over the last 4 months. Yes, he's had 2 bad performances out of his last 4, including 2 missed cuts. But last week, he showed that he has a lot of resilience. He showed that he still has that form that he's been riding over this last half a year. And at his price at $7,500, it's a misprice. He gains in all 4 statistical categories. And at that, he gains at a 0.25 stroke per round rate in all 4 of them as well. He also had a decent bounce back performance, which I mentioned before. And he's someone that hits the ball a long way and hits it very straight. He's somebody that has that high upside, very low score in him. He's also somebody that has a very, very high floor. He doesn't really go out there and blow up very often. I think that's why there's the sticker shock seeing him miss those 2 cuts recently. People see that, probably think that he's going back to his old poor self from before, but that's just not the case. Harris English was playing at an elite level for a long time. Some of the best players have down weeks. You see it all the time. You saw the miscut last week from Patrick Reed. I don't think anyone thinks that Patrick Reed is suddenly, diving into the depths of the 50s, 60s in the world rankings. Harris English is going to be just fine. I expect him to be a steal this week. He checks all 4 boxes that we're looking for. And he is also somebody that has a great around the green game, is going to be saving himself if he's in trouble. I expect a top 20 finish with the potential for a top 10 or even top 5 finish if he has a really good week. So I love Harris English. I love him as a value this week. For my diamond in the rough this week, I'm not going to go as far down as I normally do on the board. I'm going to stick in the $7,000 range and go with Cameron Davis at $7,100. My main reasoning here is I don't see myself playing much of the $10,000 range. You guys saw my stud up top was JT coming in at $9,900, which means I'm not necessarily going to need to go down into that $6,000 range. And I think that's well quantified. This course is extremely difficult. It's not a course that you can get by with mediocre play. You have to be good in all 4 categories, and I think most of the guys, $7,000 and below, are going to miss the cut. I think all of them may, actually. I would be surprised if one came in the top 10. So with that being said, Cameron Davis, absolute stud on Pete Dye Designs. He's number 2 in the field, only after Patrick Cantlay on Pete Dye Designs, with over 30 rounds to measure. So it's not just a statistical aberration. This is a well-established trend at this point, gaining over 1.82 strokes per round. He also gains in all 4 categories, which, to be honest with you, I thought it was crazy that we saw Harris English gaining in all 4 categories in the $7,000 range. But what's even more outstanding is that Cameron Davis at $7,100 also gains in all 4 categories. His main weakness, I would say, would be his putter, where he's hardly a positive putter. But being a positive putter on tour means you are a good putter, right? That's to the tour average. So he's still above average. He gains very, very well in the other 3 categories, gaining over 0.4 strokes per round off the tee, on approach, and around the green, which makes Cameron Davis somebody that I absolutely love this week. He isn't necessarily the most accurate driver in the world, but he is somebody that has a lot of distance. The rough at TPC Sawgrass can be penal. It really depends on how they're cutting it. We'll get a report on that more towards Wednesday, but Cameron Davis, if there is penal rough, is somebody that is going to have that advantage. When you get the ball closer to the greens with that elite distance, rough shots just aren't as hard. When you have a 100-yard rough shot as compared to a 180-yard rough shot, they aren't even the same. One's going to take you 2 strokes to get there. One's going to be a relatively easy shot to get on the green. So that's why I love Cameron Davis this week. He isn't necessarily a safe play, right? We saw a missed cut last week. He was chalk last week, somebody that I played as well. He wasn't one of my picks, but I played him, and that's okay with me. He's at $7,100. He's not going to break the bank, and I think he's a great flyer for this week with potential for a win even. If Cameron Davis went out and won this week, I really wouldn't be that mind blown. He's been trending in that right direction. He profiles very well for the course, and he obviously likes the Pete Dye design. So I'm going with him as my diamond in the rough, and I love him this week. That's all for this week, guys. I hope you guys liked the preview. As always, subscribe if you guys want to see more of this content. Also, look forward to my content from TPC Sawgrass later this week. I'm going to be at the course, taking some footage from there, maybe even doing some live streams from the course as well. So look forward to that. I